Today we're taking a look at the top 10 brawlers inside of Brawl Stars, brought to you by one of the greatest players of all time, the one, the only, one of the best players in the game, the Indian sensation, which is Drajesh Mishra. So not some random clown, one of the best players in the game compiled this list. Let's get into it. But before we get into the rest of the video, a quick word from today's video sponsor. Welcome to Marvel Contest of Champions, the world famous fighting game inside of the Marvel universe. Now, boy, do I have some amazing news for you players returning to Marvel Contest of Champions in celebration of Iron Man's comeback until November the 6th. Previous events that you may have missed in previous updates are coming back with a ton of rewards to unlock. What's not to love? You can fight and collect with over 250 characters from the Marvel universe. My personal favorite champion so far has to be Hulk. I think he's just pretty broken. Over the past year, Kabam have made some huge additions and improvements to the game, such as reworking Iron Man and restoring him to his former glory, and also adding in a ton of new features, new game modes such as Battlegrounds, which is super cool. Returning players will receive an Iron Man, 3 weeks of premium sigil subscription, and a bunch of crystals. The game is free to download on both the App Store and the Google Play Store, so don't miss out on Iron Man's comeback event, especially if you're a returning player, to get those extra rewards. But if you're a new player as well, make sure to go ahead and check out using my link in the description, and let's get back into the video. So coming in at the number 10 spot, then we have Buster. So Buster recently got some changes. Well, about a month ago, he's been super OP ever since. He got his damage buff, he got his health buff, and he got his super charge rate buff. And then in this recent set of balance changes, he got a tiny damage nerf, which still means that he is one of the best brawlers inside the entire game. Of course, he's a tank, really good HP, and when you're up close, he's going to deal a ton of damage. Also has a really cool super mechanic as well, where his team can kind of hide behind him, and obviously he's going to reflect bullets. So Buster, one of those picks that you definitely want to look out for right now. Now coming in at number 9, we have Jessie. So Jessie recently got an energized star power buff and also a new hypercharge. I'm still trying to figure out what these things are, but Jessie's hypercharge is pretty darn good. Obviously, if you pop it before you pop that super, it's going to give the super like, I don't know, like 8k HP, which is kind of ridiculous, especially when you healing that up with the energized star power that just got buffed. And of course, Jessie going to be good on Heist, Brawl Ball, pretty much usable anyway, I would say, except for probably Knockout and Bounty. Unless, of course, you're against a ton of tanks. Let's talk about tanks. Tanks are really good in the meta right now. And Jessie, of course, one of those best tank counters that you want to whip out. If they're running the double tank on Heist, on Brawl Ball, on Gem Grab, whip that Jessie out. It's going to do pretty nice with that turret. Obviously, really good damage. That slowing effect from the gadget as well can be used to deal with tanks very well. But in general, Jessie going to be very good in the meta because there's just a ton of tanks right now. Coming in at number 8, we have Squeak. So Squeak, I know what you're thinking. Why the heck is Squeak on this list if there are so many tanks that are good right now? That's because you compare Squeak with like 2 tank cows, like a Jessie, like a Colette, something like that. And like, what are they going to do, honestly? They literally can't do anything because you can't just have all tank counters, right? So Squeak is still going to be able to deal with those tanks decently well. Of course, Squeak did have a couple of nerfs recently. That residue star power going from 10 seconds to 6 seconds per gadget in the last couple balance changes. But of course, you have those new gears now where you can add an extra gadget, so you can actually have 4 of those residue gadgets anyway. Of course, that's one of the best things about Squeak. But Squeak is still going to be able to deal with tanks okay, as long as you have some other brawlers in the comp that can deal with them pretty well. Of course, Squeak usable, of course, pretty much every single mode except for a couple of bounty and knockout maps. But mainly just want to look out for a good matchup for Squeak. Any of those weak brawlers, Squeak's going to do really good against, and especially on something like Brawl Ball. If you're not against any tanks, Squeak is going to be an amazing last pick in draft, and that's why Squeak stays so strong in the meta, because of course he still does have an insane amount of damage and he's still pretty good. Now coming in at number 7, we have Sandy. So last month Sandy got a buff, so it only takes 6 shots to get your super instead of the previous 7, and then recently he actually got both of his star powers buffed, so you now heal more and also do more damage when in the super. And also one of his gears got buffed, so now enemies do 20% less damage when they are actually in that super. Because back when I used to actually play, you could just stand in that super, wouldn't really do anything. Now you're gonna be dealing like almost 300 damage yourself and gonna be doing a ton less damage if you do stand in it. So now it actually has quite a decent amount of area control, because you just can't really stand in it, because you're gonna lose a ton of HP, you're not gonna do any damage. So that has meant that Sandy has gone right back up in the rankings in terms of the meta. And, you know, Sandy, of course, going to be usable on Brawl and Gem Grab mainly, but any kind of like short range map, Sandy is, of course, going to be super, super good on. Now, coming in at number 6, we have Spike, one of my all-time favorite brawlers. So Spike's recent changes were all the way out 4 months ago, where he got both gadgets buffed and that fertilized star power buffed. The gadgets are pretty useless anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. But the reason he's come back is because there are so many good tanks right now, like the Shellys, like the Bulls, like the Busters, that are just so strong. And Spike, obviously one of those best tank counters that you can use, especially good on those kind of medium range Brawl and Gem Grab maps. And of course, with the recent addition of his hypercharge, even though the effect of the super being a little bit bigger isn't too good, just the hypercharge is really handy to have, and that's why you see Spike a lot more now. Coming in at number 5, then we have Crow. Now Crow is so good right now. Obviously received quite a big nerf to his slow and toxins gadget, going from 3 to 2 seconds, but obviously a huge buff to the carrying Crow star power. A huge damage buff there. Now you're going to deal a lot more damage, which is really helpful for enemies obviously below 50% HP. You're just going to absolutely melt them. Of course, you do have the mythic gear as well for Crow, where you're going to deal, your poison is going to deal 30% more damage, which is of course really strong as well. And Crow's one of those brawlers which is always going to be good because you just don't really have any bad matchups. Even against throwers, you're eventually going to get your super, you have to jump on them. Of course, Crow's still pretty good against tanks, although that gadget nerf means he's not like as good of a counter as he used to be, but still gonna be decent against tanks and pretty much usable across all of the modes except for on some bounty and knockout maps. So coming in at number 4, we have Shelly. So Shelly, obviously one of the recent brawlers to get a hypercharge around a month ago, which obviously helped her out, but she was pretty strong before then. Shelly, one of the best brawlers for this entire year. You know, all those PSG Shelly memes, and finally Shelly, actually one of the best brawlers in the game.
We're gonna stop to collect pigeons and see if we can have a little better luck. Okay, this Gale before I get this primo, because this Gale is yikes, how do we lose that?
You love to see it, but Shelly got a really big nerf to her super recharge rate, which means it's very tough to kind of, or a lot tougher than it used to be to recycle that super. But you do have a buff to the band-aid in the recent changes, which has helped her out a little bit. I think that's definitely now the better star power. The healing is really good from that. But again, a really tank-based meta. A lot of Rosa, a lot of Bull, a lot of Buster. These kind of tanks that Shelly is going to do amazing against. Now coming into the top 3 brawlers right now, starting off with Bull. So around 2 months ago, Bull had a couple of buffs, a damage buff, and then a super charge rate buff, which helped him become a little bit better. But then we had Bull's hypercharge, which is absolutely broken. Whenever you use that super, it's going to reduce the amount of damage you take by 80%, which is absolutely crazy. One of the most broken hypercharges in the game for sure. And yeah, Bull is just pretty insane right now, especially on this kind of short range maps. Going to be one of the best brawlers to pick every single time. He's just so good. At number 2 then, we have Rosa. So Rosa recently got buffs to both of her star powers and one of her gadgets, which has helped her become decently better. But also this new hypercharge Rosa has is again pretty broken. Gonna add a slowing effect to all enemies basically near you, and when you already have that extra speed, it just means you can catch up to anybody so easily. Even on the more open maps, when you pop the hypercharge and the super at the same time, you're gonna be able to catch them up, you're gonna be able to slow them down when you get close to them, and you're gonna be able to take them out and cycle that super, cycle the hypercharge. And Rosa is really good, especially of course on those short range maps. But even on some of the more medium range maps, you can definitely see a ton of Rosa. Super strong right now. Of course, at number 1, that leaves us with Lou. By far the most broken hypercharge added to the game was Lou's, allowing you to essentially insta-freeze anybody with your super, kill them so easily, and then just keep cycling your super once you have that hypercharge activated. Lou is incredibly broken, pretty much only due to that hypercharge and a couple of recent buffs. Yeah, Lou, crazy good right now. Subscribe, use code Tom. Subscribe. Goodbye. Coming in at number 8. We do that.